Game 6, final game, and it made me think a lot actually, looking at the board initially. There's Familiar, which junks and gives you minus points. There's Cultist, which junks but doesn't give you minus points. And nearly every single card on this board is relevant in some way. In fact, all of them are. So there are engine parts. Fishing Village, Cultists, Nobles for draw, Lost City for draw, Goons for payload, if you like. Also Rogue if you like. On the other hand, there are two junkers on the board, Cultist and Familiar. So you really have to sit down, or I really had to sit down and think for a bit what it is that I wanted to do. Do I want to build an engine through all the junk somehow? It won't work all the time, but it may work some of the time. There's alternative VP in Duke and Nobles maybe. Or do I want to go for a more money strategy and attack Duchy Duke and play that way? Which is the better junker, Familiar or Cultist? Cultist does it faster, but Familiar gets you negative points. So these are the things that I was thinking about at the start of the game here. I reason that because Cultist is faster, I want to go for that first. If I want, I can come back later for Familiar. But the point of junk is to slow down your opponent, and Cultist will do that faster than the Familiar. And also, there may not be time to play Familiar often enough. So here, I borrow on my $4 hand for a Cultist, as does my opponent. I get 2 on my next hand, but my opponent gets 3 and picks up a Fishing Village. So I can respect that. I probably would have opened with a Fishing Village, at least one, just to keep my options open for both engine and money. Fishing Village is a good village in this kind of deck because it stays on the board for 2 turns. So here, I think for a bit and I pick up a silver over a Fishing Village. I want the silver to hit 5. The Fishing Village is less likely to do so, especially after my opponent put some junk into my deck. They don't do so on this turn, but they could have. So that's why I went for the silver over the Fishing Village at that point. Here, on 4, my opponent thinks for a bit, but eventually decides to pick up a second Cultist. So here I play my Cultist, triggers a reshuffle. If I had borrowed there, that Cultist would not have triggered a reshuffle, so that is something I should have thought about, but didn't. And on 5 here, I can borrow to pick up a Goons at this point. Now, is that good? Is that worth it? I say no, and I go for a second Cultist myself here. I can get Goons later if the game state allows for that. So here I get the second Cultist, and now I have 4. Again, you can borrow to get 5 and get Cultist, so it's not terrible. My opponent now lands a Ruins into my deck here. Borrow is one of those events like Save, where you have to be aware of it constantly for every turn throughout the game, for both you and your opponent. So, for here, my opponent is thinking about what to do because Borrow is on the board, presumably. He may also be thinking about Potion, a second Fishing Village, a Scavenger. Scavenger is good in games with lots of junk in it. They can guarantee one good card at the top of your deck at the start of your next turn. But my opponent goes for another Cultist, as do I here. So we have 3 Cultists each, and I think 1 Ruins each at this point. So here, my opponent pairs the Fishing Village with the Cultist, and with 4, again has a similar decision to last turn. Know that Borrow cuts your draw for the next turn, so that could be an issue, especially for an engine through junk. You may not want to borrow later on when you have more engine pieces. But my opponent gets a 4th Cultist. I'm able to double junk my opponent here and luckily come up with 5. That silver was a Fishing Village, you see I would be in trouble here. So again, I have the choice of borrowing for a 6 cost or picking up a treasure trove is what I was considering here. There's 5 Ruins left. I have 1 Cultist in the back. My opponent, I think, has two in the back, I believe. So that's three ruins accounted for. I think that the other cultists won't really help me dish out more ruins at this point, so I opt for the treasure trove on this shuffle because now, seeing how the deck has gone, the game has gone for these few opening turns, I'm starting to angle for this Duchy Duke strategy, and the one treasure trove plus these cultists will sustain me, I believe. My opponent now picks up a potion here, so attempting to junk me with the curses at this point. But this late in the game, I am even less worried about familiar. It won't slow me down significantly. I can get treasure trove down one or two times by the time familiar is played, and it'll put treasures in my deck, obviously. So here I borrow for 5 here for the last time. I pick up a cultist. This time my opponent didn't play a cultist, so there's what, 4 left. So I can reshuffle and maybe get like all 4 cultists in one hand and dish it out to my opponent. But instead, I get 3 ruins and my opponent borrows for a familiar here. Play a cultist and now the ruins are empty there. Not sure of the split, but it's not really that big of a deal. And I pick up a Duchy here, starting for this Duchy Duke plan. And it is at this point I realize, and I should have realized this earlier, that if I go for Duchies, that's 2 piles and Cultist is already low. So pressure is on here with piles. I get 3 Cultists down, end up with 6 coppers, picking up another Duchy very easily here. Here my opponent plays 4 cultists as well as all 4 cultists, and with 4 has a choice between, well, like I said before, the borrow fishing village is what is picked up, so they're going for this engine strategy more heavily now with the fishing villages and the cultists, for now anyway. Not picking up a treasure trove. I get another Duchy there. My opponent picks up another familiar. Here I play this cultist, end up with 7, where is save when you need it, and now half the Duchies are gone. So I'm making good pace on these Duchies. On 4 here, I believe this is the turn where my opponent picks up a scavenger, yes. And here I only have 3, but it is an easy silver. Now, you don't want the fishing village now. It's so easily drawn dead by any of these cultists. And none of the ruins are worth playing. So here, this is my first curse from the familiar. This is a good turn for my opponent. 2 cultists down, 2 familiars down, and a final cultists here comes up with 4 potions. So this is another familiar, I presume. But now, like I said, I'm not at all worried about the junk. The treasure trove can supply me enough money, and I only need to hit 5 from here on out. Not even 5, just 4, and I can borrow to get the 5 cost. So not worried about the junk. 5th Duchy for me here. My opponent plays 2 ruins, and on 4 picks up another fishing village. Again, another $4 hand for me here, but not at all a concern, as I can borrow for the 5th coin, Duchy number 6. Curse number 3 here. On 3, my opponent gets more fishing villages. This is 8, but I don't go for province here. Just focusing on the duchies at this point will put me in a good position, I believe. After this, I have options of going to rush out the cultist or to just go for dukes and finish the game on Duchy, Duke, and ruins. So here my opponent top decks a fishing village and soon actually resigns the game because they feel the position is lost. And in the chat, my opponent said that they forgot about Duke on the board, it seems, and didn't think that they could come around, get the engine up in time anyway. So that's it for the match. Thank you for watching. Comments, questions, feedback, always welcome, always encouraged.